You won't believe what my son did when my husband wasn't home.An actual story. I never thought this was how my life would turn out. A woman in her mid-40s, feeling more invisible than ever, standing by herself in a lovely home. My spouse was absent all the time. Days turned into weeks while he traveled for work. Furthermore, his homecoming felt less like a reunion and more like a formality. We hardly exchanged more than small chat. It had been years since we had shared intimacy. I cleaned, cooked, maintained appearances, and grinned at my neighbors. On the inside, though I was fading, my husband informed me that he would be departing once more, this time for over a month in the early spring. I pretended to understand and nodded. I didn't protest as usual. I didn't. I believed I had come to terms with this. My stepson Aiden returned from spring break at college just 1 week after he left. Tall and courteous, he was 22 and had always maintained a respectful distance. Our relationship had always been a formal, silent one, as I had been his parent since middle school. But now that he was a man, there was a shift in the way he gazed at me. First of all, it wasn't improper. However, it was distinct. His eyes seemed to linger a bit longer. His once casual praises suddenly felt intimate. One morning in the kitchen, he stated in a gentle voice, "You look beautiful today." I dismissed it with a giggle. My heart, however, fluttered. Almost by accident, we began to spend more time together. He would sit next to me as I watched late-night TV, offer to help with groceries, and prepare supper with me. I wasn't blind, but I made an effort to ignore the mounting stress. Every time he stood a bit too close to me or his hand touched mine, I sensed it. We watched the sunset one evening while sitting on the balcony. He informed me that he respected my ability to keep the family together and my fortitude toward his father. I was unsure of how to react. It had been years since I had received such a compliment. His speech, kind yet honest, somehow broke through the barrier I had put up around myself. I saw more in him than just my stepson. I came across a man who was aware that I was still alive. I had trouble sleeping that night. I kept playing back our exchanges. I persuaded myself it was innocuous based on the way he looked at me and the fact that I didn't back down. But I knew in my heart that I was lying. This was more than loneliness, I knew. I could no longer deny that I had gone too far emotionally. I was uneasy when I saw him again the following morning because of his smile. Even though it was wrong, I was starting to want for that attention and that sense of belonging. I woke up for the first time in a long time, yet I was scared too. I hadn't taken any action yet, but I knew I was getting close and I wasn't sure I would be able to avoid what was about to happen if I didn't do something quickly. IT took place on a Thursday night. The air felt thicker than normal and the house was silent. I had just completed dinner when the rain began to pour heavily and the electricity went off. The atmosphere changed as there were no lights, no distractions, and only candles for comfort. With 2 glasses of wine in his hands, Aiden entered the living room. With a soft smile, he replied, "I thought you could use this." Despite my hesitation, I accepted the glass. The rain hammering against the windows was the only thing we could hear while we sat in silence. My guard was lowered by the booze. Our discussion veered from recollections to feelings. He talked about how lost he had been lately, how happy he was to be home, and how safe he felt being with me. I listened, finding solace in the candor. He then said something that made me stop dead in my tracks. "You have no idea how amazing you are, do you?" He didn't avert his gaze as I stared at him in confusion. He went on to say, "You deserve someone who sees you, someone who truly makes you feel alive." My heart was racing. I wanted to tell him that this was improper and to brush it off. However, I didn't. Instead, I listened to what he had to say. I was famished for love and approval, and who was giving it didn't matter at that moment. I admitted to him that I occasionally felt as though I was vanishing from this house, and that no one was paying any attention to me anymore. I didn't pull away when he reached for and softly held my hand. It seemed so peaceful and natural, as if we had come here by accident rather than choice. He didn't touch hard. It wasn't hostile, it was heartfelt and tender. I didn't feel invisible for the first time in years. He wasn't only staring at me, they were supporting me and occupying the voids left by my husband's long-term absence. He bent in. I ought to have prevented him. I didn't. Slowly, softly, our lips met. Words could never express what that kiss did. It wasn't hurried or crazy. It was intense and filled with feelings that we had both suppressed. We sat in silence when it was over, both of us aware that we had passed a line we couldn't go back. Without saying anything more, I got up, told him I had to go to bed, and left him sitting there. But there was no sleep. My heart pounded. My mind went haywire. I was aware that our actions were improper. It was more than a simple kiss. It was treachery. Not just of my spouse, but of all I believed to be my values. Nevertheless, I didn't experience regret for a while. Something within of me was touched, seen, and awoken in a way I had forgotten was possible. I was unable to describe it. Not that I wanted to. However, I was aware that nothing would be the same going forward. Something had changed within me. I would never be able to replace it. I avoided making eye contact the following morning. Nothing felt the same, but I walked around the kitchen as if nothing had changed. Aiden came in casually, but I could see that his attitude had changed. He was now calm and self-assured, as if he had crossed a boundary and wasn't sorry. He volunteered for breakfast assistance. I didn't look up as I nodded. Although silent, the tension between us was evident. We kept the kiss to ourselves. Anything hung in the air like a secret too loud to ignore, but neither of us mentioned anything. I repeatedly reminded myself that it was only a fleeting moment, a feeble error of judgment. However, I remained motionless when his hand touched mine once again. I felt my body respond when he reached for a dish while standing right behind me. Inside of me, excitement and shame raged. Later that day, I noticed that he was purposefully observing me rather than merely idly. He examined every element of me, including my motions and face, as if it were important. It was the most attention I had received in years. Not from anyone, not even my hubby. It was incorrect. Even though I was aware of it, I still wanted more. Aiden started to spend less time with his buddies and more time at home. He used walks, errands, and movie nights as justifications to be close to me. Our discussions became more in-depth. He inquired about my early years, my aspirations, and the things I had given up over the years. I came to see how much of myself I had sacrificed for a marriage that offered me nothing in return. I made an effort to establish limits. I informed him that this was risky and irresponsible and that it couldn't go on. He nodded, listened, and even expressed regret. He muttered that he couldn't stop thinking about me and that I deserved better than to be abandoned by a man who didn't even notice when I sobbed myself to sleep the next time he discovered me by myself. I felt like I was being stitched back together with each phrase. "You don't have to keep pretending," he remarked, touching my face one evening. "You're free to experience emotions once more." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I said enough with the way I stared at him. Long ago, the emotional boundary had been crossed. It wasn't planned what happened next. It was unavoidable. I no longer recognized myself. I was a woman caught between loyalty and the desperate need to be wanted, between desire and guilt. I reminded myself that I still had power and could put an end to this before it got out of hand. In actuality, though, I had already fallen. Nevertheless, I was afraid of the repercussions, not just of being discovered, but also of what would occur if he departed again, when his vacation was up, and I found myself in this place alone myself once more. Is this me he would take with him? Or would I once more be left broken? This time, Aiden's sabbatical was ending due to an error I could never reverse, and the consequences of our actions started to weigh more heavily on us both. In his quiet moments, I could see it. He gave me a look but didn't say much. Our stillness felt heavier now for some reason, guilty but not intimate. He began packing, and I felt fragments of my little world crumble with each folded garment. Yes, we had gone too far, but what now? We never discussed what would come next. I didn't ask, and he made no promises. I wanted to avoid delusions. I had lived long enough with a husband who hardly paid attention to me, shrouded in a false sense of security. However, this one was unique. It was real, unvarnished, powerful, and incorrect. It had to stop now. For the first time since everything started, he came to me uncertain the night before he left. He made no attempt to touch me. He only gazed at me as though he was unable to speak. "There is nothing that I regret. But I don't want to ruin your life either," he replied quietly. Unable to answer, I nodded. My throat constricted. I couldn't tell if it was relief or heartache. When he departed the following morning, I watched him leave without a ceremony, standing at the door like a stranger. No promises, no farewells, just a brief moment. The silence of the home returned, but it was cooler this time. After a few days, my spouse came back as though nothing had happened. He talked about business transactions over dinner and brought back mementos and stories from meetings. I avoided his eyes, but he didn't notice. He was unaware of my hollowness. Only I could see that I had physically and emotionally given myself to someone else. I initially believed that I would be overcome with guilt, but instead I felt a deep regret for the years I had squandered feeling invisible as well as for what I had done. It wasn't only the kiss or the contact that was betrayed. In only 1 week, someone who wasn't even supposed to care had a clearer picture of me than my husband had in years. Once, Aiden sent a brief text saying, "Take care of yourself." I deleted it after staring at it for hours. I was aware that we couldn't carry on and that I couldn't return to the previous state of affairs. It was impossible for me to undo the alteration I had undergone. Ultimately, I found myself with a marriage that appeared intact on the outside but was utterly empty on the inside. I spent every day next to a man who believed that everything was all right. I was burdened with decisions that I couldn't reverse. Perhaps avoiding detection and having to endure the stillness is the true penalty. I discovered that attention without commitment is only temptation, and love without attention is just habit. I lost a part of me somewhere in the middle that I will never regain.